It's Lidia with MUSE TV. I'm here this morning with Diana Peralta, the writer and director for Lo Mio, premiering this month on HBO Max and HBO Latino. Diana, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So, Lo Mio is your feature debut film, and it has made a splash at the film festival. You've won Best Narrative Feature, Best Film. It must feel amazing to have your work have all these great praises, especially right out the gate. So, tell us how Lo Mio came to be.
Of course. It just doesn't feel real. Like I'm so glad to see people respond to the film and that it's going to have a life outside of the film circuit with HBO. So I couldn't be happier. Um, Lo Mio is kind of a crazy story because it's something that I've known I wanted to write for a really long time. And I was born and raised in New York, but my family is from the Dominican Republic. So I spent a lot of my time growing up between both places. And so I've personally always felt so deeply connected to Dominican Republic and to New York. So I knew that there was something really interesting there about like feeling a sense of both and like the clashes that can also happen between those identities. And I just knew that that was something a lot of people outside of me and outside of my family deal with, whether they're Dominican, Puerto Rican, of any place, being stuck between two different cultures. So there was definitely something there. And I spent a lot of time growing up at my grandparents' house in Santiago. It's in the north of the Dominican Republic. And I love that house. It's so unique. My grandpa built it. It's been in my family for a long time. And it just made sense like, oh, I realized how beautiful it was. And this is a story that had to be told. So I just decided to use my family's house as a setting for it. So it kind of became this opportunity to honor and become a love letter to, to Santiago and to my connections to both places. I mean, it's kind of a miracle that it happened because my grandma passed away just a few months before filming, and we found out the house was going to be sold and demolished. And I knew like if we lost the house, the moving wasn't going to happen. So we basically double time and went into it and got it all done. We shot the movie in 12 days. We edited it in 1 month, and we got it out the door. And it premiered just a few months after we finished shooting. So it's been a whirlwind, but I'm so happy we made it work, and I'm really proud of what we created.
Yeah, no, I mean, just from what I've seen with the trailer, it looks amazing. And it really, you can tell that it has a very personal touch. I mean, when you were writing it and directing it, do you ever kind of feel a little hesitant to open up such a part of yourself? Because obviously there's a lot of you and a lot of your history and a lot of your family in this film. Is it easy as the writer and director to kind of open up your world to people to be able to critique it and comment on it?
It's definitely hard, and it is so personal. So it's hard to open up and be vulnerable in that sense. But the good thing is the film, it's fiction. So it's not like totally written about my life or my family's life. The siblings are inspired by people I know. I don't have a brother, but the main character, Dante, I've met many types of Dante in my life. And I just wanted an opportunity to kind of bring that to life in the film. So it's not necessarily like my personal family story, but it is something that I've seen happen so many times. And it's something I've witnessed a lot, like what happens when siblings are split up and grow up in different places, what resentments might come up because of it, and what happens when you bring them back together. So in that sense, I was really honored to write that story. And I hope that, and I think people are taking it, like what I've heard is people are relating and seeing their own families in it and seeing themselves in the film. So it's a pretty universal story that a lot of people can relate to, but definitely bringing people into the house and kind of opening up my family's house and their things, especially after my grandma passing away. Everything in the house was so personal and I felt attached to everything. But at that point, it was all or nothing. Like I wanted to capture it all, even just selfishly, to have a document of what this place liked and to have something I can go back to revisit the house since it's gone now. But it was difficult, but in the end, like totally happy that we got in there and got access to the place before we lost it, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think definitely just the setting and the authenticity of it really helps the film stand out. It really made me feel like I was there, just because I'm like, it looks so real. It doesn't look like there's no like extra lighting. It's just, I love authenticity in films, and especially when it comes to films of Latino culture, I'm like, the authentic, the better, because we already have a lot of misrepresentation in the mainstream.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
And one thing that I noticed in your trailer was it says, where there's familia, there's love, but even the strongest ties are tested. And obviously, this film is about, like you said, siblings when they're separated, growing up in different places. And we've seen, and I'm sure you've seen too in cinema, various films that show a different dynamic of the family, but we've never really seen it about the Latino family. it's mostly always kind of the same, like, oh, it's comedic, it's huge
Mm-hmm.
family dinners, but it's like we go through the same things everybody else does.
Exactly.
We grow up in different places, we have different views. It's not all the same, and because of the media, everybody has this idea of the Latino family, which tends to lean a little towards, I want to say, the stereotypical. And
Mm-hmm.
while yes, there is some truth in certain portrayals, it's not exactly authentic. So as a writer, when you're writing it and you're portraying, these family dynamics and these characters, did you ever worry that someone might misinterpret something as a stereotype or not get the understanding of, this is just how the family dynamic also works. It's not
Mm.
something that we're doing because it's what's believed is the norm.
Yeah, and I wasn't nervous about that at all because in my case, I'm one of three sisters. I'm the middle child. I'm super close with my sisters. We live together in Brooklyn, and my relationship with my sisters was totally my inspiration for how the siblings are and their connection. So I just pulled from my experience, and I'm authentic. I know my story, and I knew that I would tell it in my own authentic way, and people would understand and see themselves in it. So, and because I was just writing what I knew, I didn't have to rely on tropes or a stereotype or an idea of someone. It's just who they are, and that comes with good and bad. Like, I've seen a lot of films like what you're saying, where it's just very comedic, it's lighthearted, but we don't get to the meat of things. But at the same time, it's not always all heavy. I mean, I'm Dominican, and I know a lot of people are like this. We are super loving, lively people, and when things go down, we'll feel it, but we also just always want to raise each other up. So in the film, there's these moments of conflict with the siblings where they're fighting and you think they're going to like push each other, and then the next day it's like all is forgotten, and in the end you're family and you're always going to be there for each other. So we all kind of just go through those highs and lows together, and that's universal. That's everyone. And so because I was just writing what I saw and what I experienced, I knew that it would be authentic as long as I was true to myself. So and I think it worked, because in the end, when I see the screen, I don't see, oh, here's some Afro Latinos being Afro Latino. No, they're just a family going through the struggle together who happen to be Afro Dominicans, So because I was so passionate about what I was telling, and I just wrote what I knew from my family and what I've witnessed, I knew that it would come through and people would see the authenticity and the truth there. So, but I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because it was so important to not feed into those tropes, to not like lean into any of the stereotypes that have existed. I just wanted to tell just kind of an everyday family story that happens just in a beautiful place and in a culture that a lot of people don't know about, and that's not celebrated that often. So it's kind of, we put a lot of attention to make sure that we tell the most authentic story as possible.
Yeah, definitely, when I was watching the trailer, I definitely did have two thoughts that came up. Because right at the beginning, you know, you can tell it's okay, it's about a Dominican family, Latino. And I remember the first thought I had was, well, if it's about Latino family, why aren't they speaking Spanish? And then the
Mm-hmm.
second thought was, well, why do they have to speak Spanish? And it kind of reminded me of something that I have always believed, which is that when it comes to, the entertainment and the representation of Latinos, there's this huge divide that doesn't really represent us because, there are many Latinos and Hispanos who live in the States who are fluent in both languages, but yet in the entertainment market, there's not really like something that represents that. It's kind of
Right.
one way or the
Or the
other,
other.
and it's one or the other. And one of the things that I've noticed is when it comes to certain studios, certain networks attempting to bridge that gap, there's a lot of misrepresentation. And one of the traits that I think is constantly misrepresented is the use of the Spanish language to signify that a scene is dramatized or it's
Mm-hmm.
heightened. And, it's like I said earlier, like, yes, because we're bilingual, we do tend to start off in English and we can end in Spanish. Doesn't always mean we're upset or, we're
Mm-hmm.
angry. It just happens. It can also happen in the other way. I can start off a sentence in
Mm-hmm.
Spanish and I will end in English, but because of the media portrayal, everyone thinks, oh, a Latin person starts speaking Spanish, they're upset, and it's like, well, maybe I just can't find the right words. But
Mm-hmm.
that clarification is never really made. It's just the
Right.
constant thing that you see over and over and over. And again, yes, there is some truth. No, it's not always
Right.
this. There's plenty of reasons. So as a writer, as a director, as a member of the Latino community, how important would you say it is that we start sort of breaking down these stereotypes and correcting them and really showing more authenticity when it comes to bringing forth like who we really are as like members of like the Latino community and the Hispanic community, since we're not all the same.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that point that you brought up with the language, because we are so much more nuanced than that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we don't, people don't often pay attention to those little details. And in the film, for example, there's nuance between being Dominican and being Dominican American. Like, I feel 100% Dominican. I love my culture, but when I'm in DR, I'm a gringa. You know, I speak perfect Spanish, but there is some type of separation there, and there's like beauty in that. And there can be tough things that come up with that too. But in the film, for example, it's the brother was born and raised in the DR. He never left, so he's 100% Dominicano. The two sisters, born and raised in New York, they're Dominican Yorkers. They feel their Dominicanness totally, but when they're there, they're kind of fish out of water, especially because they haven't been there in so long. So when these siblings come together and clash or enjoy each other, like, the language varies. He might come in speaking full Spanish and like go to English when he wants to like yell at them. The sisters might come in and be more English dominant. So when they start yelling, they're going into English because they feel more comfortable, like just tapping into that mindset. And it can change in any moment, as you know. So the film plays a lot with language. And basically how we did that was just like, I spoke to the actors in that moment, hey, let's run it the way it was written, but let's do it again. In this moment, say however you want to say it in your own words. And sometimes that would come out in Spanish and sometimes that was English. And that's just how we are. We just are so seamlessly kind of dipping our toes in both worlds, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think giving the space for them to kind of make those decisions themselves as actors and like feeling their truth in that moment, I think that helped a lot of the authenticity, especially around the language. But yeah, aside from that, I'm glad you brought that up, but it's super important to tackle those things, because if we're not telling our own stories, we can't rely on anyone else to tell them, and they'll just say it wrong anyway. So we just all need to like be doing our part. And there's tons of people doing this already. It's just a matter of lifting other filmmakers up, lifting other actors up and producers up to help tell those stories, to make it a more rounded vision of Latinos and who we are and how different we are from each other, but also where our common ground is. So that's definitely something that was extremely important for me for the Lo Mio, but something that I will absolutely be prioritizing with my next film or with whatever I do in my future. That's always going to be top of mind. But absolutely, it's so critical to do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really does seem like such a simple thing to like call out, but it's just, you see it on TV and you think, oh, it's no big deal, but then you go out in public and it's just like everyone thinks, are you upset? And it's like, why do I have to
No.
be upset? It's like, no, I'm just, and it happens the same way, like you said, like in your characters when they go to Dominican, they're completely gringa. And I mean, I've had the same experience, and I'm like, I ordered pancakes. I went to Mexico and they could tell that I wasn't from there. And it was like, excuse me. But we don't see those authenticity portrayals in
Right.
anywhere. And it's really, really kind of hard. So as a viewer, I think it's great that, you are really pushing that forward and really wanting to make that change. And you were talking about, a next project. What are some of the things you want to tackle? What are some of the things that you want to definitely bring forth and help in doing so by bringing up other directors and writers and doing the same?
Well, in terms of my own story, I'm in a really interesting place because during the pandemic, I've just been sitting at home working, but also trying to figure out like what the story I want to tell is. And I'm just trusting my gut and exploring and having fun right now. I don't feel tied down to a specific genre or a place, which is a scary and exciting place to be because I could literally just go anywhere as a writer. Right now, I'm like writing a thriller with my sister since we've been sitting at home, and we're like, hey, I love horror. I'm a huge horror thriller nerd, and that's not what I created with Lo Mio, but I'm not closed off to telling different types of stories. I'm still early and I want to explore and have fun with it. And no matter what I write, it's always going to be from the perspective of a Black Latinx perspective, because that's just who I am. So in terms of supporting, like I'm a mentor. I have a mentor who's a really great Latina TV director and filmmaker. And we have just started to like build our own community of people to help rise each other up and help be there during these difficult moments, helping answering these questions as well, because I'm a Dominican director and I'm a woman and I'm a Black American, that doesn't mean I have all the answers either. And I'm trying to figure out like what's the next move for myself as well. So it's just about building that community and finding that tribe of people who are going to support and lift you up, and just always making sure that you're helping support others out there, because we're not just only ourselves in the world, and it's so important to help bring up other filmmakers who are trying to do what you're doing. So that's definitely something that's a priority for me as I figure out what's next. But it's an interesting place to be for sure, especially stuck at home, imagining when the next time we're going to be on set is. So
Yeah, no, it's definitely a crazy time. I mean, there's both opportunities for like a bunch of creativity to flow, and then there are the times when it's like a little hard to get it going. But I mean, definitely, I think within the past 3 years, there has been this change in the representation of Latino culture. So, I mean, I'm definitely excited to see what else you're going to be coming
awesome.
up with, because I think you are part of that, helping us kind of get our stories out there the way they're meant to be told. No more of like the stereotypes, no more playing into
Hmm.
it. Um, I think it's definitely important. I think this film, when it comes out and people see it, so many people, whether you're Dominican or Mexican, Salvadorian, doesn't matter. I think so many people will definitely relate to it and feel that it's a real and authentic representation of what we're
Yeah,
having, because, we all go through it, but for some reason we haven't really had our chance to tell our version of it and how we deal with it. So I am
exactly.
really excited. I am really excited for people to see this film. I'm really excited to hear what all the fans have to say, how everyone responds, and I can't wait to see what else you have coming up
Oh,
as well.
thank you
So
so much. I appreciate that.
no, well, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking to us, and can't wait to see how the film ends up turning out.
Thank you so much. It's been amazing. And thank you for asking the hard questions. Like, I love that we can have a conversation and just be real with each other. So
Oh,
keep doing what you're doing. That's awesome.
oh well, thank you for answering them. I mean, I was right when I saw it, I was like, I have so many questions, because if I was to ask anybody else, I feel like nobody would really get it. Like nobody would really understand why I would be asking these questions, or anybody else would be asking them. So I think it's great that you knew why, you knew the importance, and like, again, it shows in your work just how amazing everything's going to turn out to be. So thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Awesome. You're the best. It was great talking to you.
It was great talking to you, Diana. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye.